Extraterrestrial life, whether out of curiosity or fear, its existence or non-existence has inspired works of fiction, space missions, and billion-dollar government research programs. Satellites and telescopes scan the depths of the visible universe for even the slightest indication that life exists outside of Earth. However, stories of extraterrestrial nature can be found much closer to home. Mars, Venus, and even our own moon have been the subject of countless theories and tales of extraterrestrial life hiding on or beneath their surfaces. In fact, one such foreboding tale comes from even closer, from right here in Earth's own orbit. Dating back to the days of Nikola Tesla and possibly far older, this is a story about an unexplained object that should not have been there. An object alleged to have been orbiting our planet since before recording history. This is the story of the Black Knight satellite. In the darkness of space that cradles the Earth, a massive and complex structure looms, possibly having circled our tiny blue rock since before humanity emerged from caves and began carving our history into stone tablets. Those who have discovered the signals being sent out by the unknown object have dubbed it the Black Knight. Among the earliest records of human interaction with the Black Knight satellite comes from none other than famed scientist, inventor, and genius Nikola Tesla. In 1899, Tesla was monitoring a wireless receiver of his own design when he began to receive transmissions from an unknown source. The signal, according to Tesla, was mathematical in nature, indication that it had come from an intelligent source. However, Tesla claimed that the orientation of the transmission suggested that it could not have come from Earth, and for the rest of his life Tesla swore that the signal had come from extraterrestrials. He said that the source of the signal had been moving, and after a time it disappeared, returning at times with seemingly no rhyme or reason. In the 1900s, strange, unidentified radio signals were received anywhere on the globe where there was a radio. Many of these radio anomalies bore all the same hallmarks of Tesla's account from before the turn of the century. The signals were of unknown origin, were difficult to track as they seemed to be moving, at times disappearing completely only to return at a later date. Then came the 1950s. Though the first man-made satellite would not be launched into orbit until October of 1957, Sputnik, by the Russians, new articles citing astronomers and government officials and agencies claimed as far back as 1954 that there was a strange artificial satellite orbiting Earth. Even more suggestive, these astronomers and officials claimed that the satellite was in polar orbit, something that would have been incredibly difficult to do even after humans had been successfully launching satellites into space. One 1954 article in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch talks about Donald Keyhoe, an American Marine Corps naval aviator who claimed to have first-hand knowledge that at least one large, silvery, disc-shaped object was circling Earth in a very unusual polar orbit. It appears that even before humans were launching our own satellites, we were observing these orbital anomalies and wondering where they had come from or how they had gotten there. Even further still, the unusual polar orbit of the mystery satellite would explain why the signals that had been received for decades would mysteriously vanish and reappear in seemingly random new locations in the sky. After the launch of Sputnik, the polar orbit of these unidentified satellites became the subject of even more controversy. Organizations responsible for successful satellite launches discovered that the inconsistency of gravitational forces acting on objects in polar orbit made it extremely difficult for them to maintain their orbit for longer periods of time. Polar orbit was not implemented in human-launched satellites until the early 1960s because of these difficulties. So how was it that so many individuals and agencies seemed to be observing a satellite in polar orbit in the early 1950s? How could Tesla have observed something similar with these radio anomalies in 1899? Is it possible that a satellite of unknown origins has been in polar orbit above the Earth since before man had the necessary technology to have put it there? Could these unidentified signals have come from the Black Knight? Throughout the years, many have claimed to produce video or photographic evidence of the Black Knight satellite. Many of these photographs can be easily explained. The following images, for instance, are from the STS-88 space shuttle launch and mission from 1998. These images are widely circulated as images of the Black Knight satellite. However, in the interest of truth, these images have very clearly captured a thermal blanket that was lost during the mission. In this video, released of the mission, you can clearly see the blanket escape from the astronaut who is servicing the International Space Station. Radio chatter can be heard as a voice says, "Looks like a thermal blanket got away from you there."
You get a 008. Where'd you see that? Was that the code on the thing or?
Jerry, what's the thermal coverage got away from you?
Going out that way pretty quickly. Port wing and forward. Probably feed out your W2.
The continued circulation of these images does nothing but sow disinformation and obscure truthful evidence of the Black Knight satellite. There are, however, alleged photographs of the Black Knight satellite that cannot be explained. The following image was taken from the live feed of the International Space Station. A man was recording the feed, and he noticed that the feed had been cut out. When he looked back through his recording of the live stream, what he saw just before the feed cut was this image. An ominous sight, to say the least. The image appears to depict a very large, dark, unnatural-looking object in low Earth orbit. This object does not appear to be any form of readily identifiable space debris. It bears no resemblance to the widely circulated and sensationalized thermal blanket images from the STS shuttle mission. Credible images of the satellite are rare, but they often come from other satellites or the cameras mounted on the International Space Station. One would need a very powerful telescope to get a good look at the satellite from the ground. However, the International Space Station can be seen by the naked eye on some clear nights, so I have no doubt that some may have captured the Black Knight satellite with their smartphones, though it would not be possible to tell what they were looking at. One may not even notice the extreme rarity that they have committed to film or data. The most definitive image of the Black Knight satellite could be sitting in someone's cloud storage waiting to be deleted, or gathering dust on an old roll of film that will never again see the light of day. If NASA's ongoing denial that the Black Knight exists is any indication, I'd say they would be happy to let any of those images stagnate. With all of the heavy disinformation being spread constantly throughout pop culture about the Black Knight, this truly incredible story runs a serious risk of being buried under the lies. People claim that the satellite has been confirmed to have arrived in Earth orbit 13,000 years ago, an arbitrary amount of time with zero supporting evidence. The signals transmitted by the Black Knight have been translated by charlatans the world over, each new deceiver claiming to have deciphered a star chart or a direct message from extraterrestrial intelligence. Be wary of such liars. There is enough real, observable evidence for the story of the Black Knight to stand on its own without promoting false, sensational nonsense. In fact, in spite of all this dishonesty, there is more evidence to support the existence of the Black Knight surfacing each and every year. In 2016, a US government agency called the National Reconnaissance Office launched several secretive satellites whose purposes were highly speculated upon. Few can say with any credibility what the purposes of those missions were, but one thing that stands out about them was their mission patch, which depicted none other than a Black Knight. Now, to be fair, the reconnaissance organization has somewhat of a reputation for having controversial or just somewhat thought-provoking mission patches. Here are a few of them to compare. There appears to be a relatively constant theme amongst these patches. An animal or mythological being has the earth enshrouded inside of its grasp, as though nothing is out of its reach. And as unsettling as that sounds, it makes sense considering the NRO is a surveillance organization. They are ultimately a spy network. A network of spy satellites. And the purposes of this network, while easily inferred, are completely classified. However, why the thematic change for the patch for this mission? What does a Black Knight have to do with surveillance? Were there secretive satellite missions an attempt to communicate with or intercept an ancient extraterrestrial satellite? The purposes behind these satellites were so highly classified that it is impossible to know. And if the nature of the National Reconnaissance Office is any indication, we may never find out in the future what those satellites were for. If a Black Knight appearing on the patch for these mission launches was just a joke at the expense of the UFO community, we may never hear the punchline. And if it was truly a mission investigating an ancient alien satellite in low Earth orbit, well, we probably will never find out about that either. At least, not until Elon Musk finds it, parks a Tesla Roadster on it, and then lands it in Los Angeles. Until then, however, I encourage you, the watcher, to keep your head up with your eyes to the stars. You may be the next in line of fortunate people to gaze upon the greatest mystery ever to orbit the Earth. And as you're watching the stars, know that it is quite possible that you yourself are being observed by a massive, impossible satellite, one that has been circling our skies since we bore no resemblance to what we are today. A satellite that, perhaps, would suggest that we are not alone, and that someone else in the universe knows we are here. Thank you for watching and listening. listening.